Hello and welcome. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. So nice to be back here on a Tuesday morning live. I say Tuesday morning because I always start with California, and I figure I'll just start with the people in Australia and Singapore and the Philippines today. And it's Tuesday morning where they are. So I'm going for, does that make any sense to you guys? Yeah, so happy Tuesday morning to you. Or if you're here in the United States, happy Monday afternoon or evening. Got a great show for you. The second hour, a very, well, I don't want to oversell him because he's a very funny priest, a brilliant priest. And he just wrote a book about Aristotle, and we're going to talk about Aristotle. And but he does it in a way that's really entertaining. So if you got any kids that it might be maybe you think this one might be interested in some philosophy. Well, Father Andrew Younan, who's going to be here second hour, is the perfect guy for that. This hour, we start as we've been starting lately on Mondays with Trent Horn. That's an awful good way to start. Trent Horn, of course, defender of life and defender of Christianity in a whole bunch of books and debates and talks. And thanks for being here, Trent.
Good to be here, Cy. Though I think if we're going to greet everyone around the world, why don't we just start at midnight, say happy midnight snack, buenos noches in Madrid, guten Nacht in Frankfurt.
Wow.
Where it's midnight in Europe right now, and then just move
Well, it's about
across.
midnight. And I'm not exactly sure of the geography, but Nigeria, I usually think we're starting around midnight in Nigeria, too. And we have quite a few. So go ahead and say it in Nigerian. Say good evening in Nigerian.
Sure. I could say good. I'll say good evening because I'm sure people speak English there. In Lagos, so I believe it's actually 11 o'clock, slightly different time zone than Madrid or Frankfurt.
Oh, look at you! Wow, I wasn't aware that you were so aware.
So if we started at midnight and we went through the time zones, we'd end at Lagos.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right. All right. Well, I'll do that next time. This time,
right.
I just went general. Happy Tuesday morning. We're going to do tips for defending the faith this hour. You can ask Trent any tips for defending the faith. That includes defending life, because certainly one of the things that Christians do in the world today and might need help doing is defending life in all of its stages. But anything else having to do with the faith. You know, you have someone challenge you on the faith, on your belief in God. You know, we get it all the time here. We get very flip stuff sometimes, you know, like we put up a video where we're discussing some aspect of the divine nature or something, and then people say, like really intelligent things like, have fun believing in your sky god, your fake sky god or something. So maybe you've been challenged with something like that. And that was not a very good story. That did not. It seemed like it was going to be a good story, and then it turned out to be kind of dull by the end of it. Like it just. Sorry to all of you atheists who are respectable, nice people. I'm sorry I picked on you by referring to those who are smart Alex. But anything.
So I haven't really heard Sky God. I've heard Sky Daddy more.
Oh, Sky Daddy. They say Sky. Oh yeah, I have heard that.
Sky Daddy. Among those who are have more of the. Rhetorical edge from new atheism. I know other atheists who are very philosophically aware who would not say that. But if I believed in a God, I would say my God is not a sky God. He's at the very least, he is a space God. All of space, time, matter, and energy is present to him in one immediate, eternal now. But but it's like sky God does make it, but if you say space God, it does sound pretty imposing.
Yes, right, exactly. And there's all the romance of space. I don't know. We're not interested in the sky. We've conquered the sky. We fly through the sky all the time. People are so tired of flying through the sky that they complain when they have a long flight.
But space is the final frontier.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's not actually. Death is the final frontier, but.
You know, if you go into space, there's a decent chance
that you'll experience the final frontier. Yeah,
you're not prepared.
The number is 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. You can ask Trent anything you'd like as far as how to defend the faith. It's something that Trent is very, very good at. And you probably know that because you've probably enjoyed his podcast at some point, which you can get at TrentHornPodcast.com. It's called Counsel of Trent. Or maybe you've run across his social media presence or his books or all that kind of stuff. So you want some tips from a guy who really gets out there and knows how to do it, knows what works, what doesn't work. 888-318-7884. We start in Massachusetts. Thank goodness, starting right in the heart of civilization. Luca in Massachusetts, watching on YouTube. You are numero uno today. Go ahead with your question for Trent.
Hi, Trent. Yeah, so a good question for you. So what would Catholic teaching say that you should do when you have embryos that have been created through IVF but haven't yet been implanted into like a surrogate mother? Would Catholic teaching say that you should go through with that process or that you should stop?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, the church has left this kind of an open question about what to do with these embryos. I do know the one thing that's being debated right now is the example that you gave is a bit different from what is being debated at this moment. So your question is, what do we do with couples? They do IVF, they create these embryos, they're frozen in cryopreservation. Can this couple, let's say they discover IVF, they find out the church is teaching IVF is immoral. How do they act moral going forward because they've already created these children? What Catholic theologians debate right now is what to do with embryos that have been abandoned by their parents. Could people adopt them solely for the embryo's benefit? And the answer to the way the church approaches that question, I think, would also relate to the way the church would approach the question of what these parents should do now that they have created embryos in a lab when they should not have done that. Dignitatis Personae from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith many years ago, not many, more than 10 years ago, back in the I think it was 2008, 2007, around that time. It said, it has also been proposed to allow humans to be born who would be condemned to destruction. There could be a form of prenatal adoption. This proposal, praiseworthy with regard to the intention of respecting and defending human life, presents various problems not similar to those mentioned above about how you can't just experiment on embryos or use them to treat infertility. All things considered, it needs to be recognized that the thousands of abandoned embryos represent a situation of injustice, which in fact cannot be resolved. Then it goes on to say John Paul II urged the world's authorities to not have more embryos be created. So what I would say is when you look at different moral theologians, that the church is pessimistic against adopting embryos, either if you're not related to them, or even in the case of a husband and wife who have an embryo that is related to them, you're continuing this process. Probably one of the foremost proponents who would say that it is immoral to do this, even for a married couple, would be someone like Father Tad Paholczek. He would say that in the case even of a husband and wife who create an embryo through IVF, only the husband should impregnate the wife, and it's disordered for anyone else to impregnate his wife. And so even if they are their biological embryos, it would be a lab technician who impregnates his wife, and that would be harmful to the unity of marriage, the act of procreation, things like that. However, on the other end, you have other well-respected Catholic moral theologians who say that if the married couple chose to have these children implanted, it would be for the child's good. They would repent of creating the child in the first place, but would be acting in the child's interest to bring them to term. So I would say at this point, the magisterium is probably is pessimistic, or maybe issuing a prudential judgment against adopting embryos, but the magisterium has not definitively taught embryos cannot be adopted for the purpose of allowing the children to be born. So couples may discern that they could discern that they don't want to do anything that could possibly be wrong, so they could leave their children in cryopreservation, or they might discern that they have a duty to bring the child to term. They place the child in a dangerous situation. They would be able to discern either. Theologians are debating this right now. I'm currently putting together an anthology with the National Catholic Bioethics Center on embryo adoption. I'm one of the editors of the volume, where we'll have all these different voices talking about it in one place. So stay tuned for that. But for now, they could discern either to allow the children to remain in cryopreservation or discern to adopt them if they are doing so for the child's sake. So I hope that is helpful.
Luca, I hope it's helpful as well, but we got to take our first break. We'll do that right now. And one line open if you want to call, 888-318-7884. It's Tips for Defending the Faith with Trent Horn on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting support provided by Homeschool Connections. Homeschool Connections hosts the Catholic Homeschool Conference. The 2022 Catholic Homeschool Conference is June 10th through 11th, and the website is CatholicHomeschoolConference.com. That's CatholicHomeschoolConference.com.
EWTN is now on Twitter. Get short, timely messages from EWTN on your computer or cell phone. It's easy to stay up to date on a wide variety of topics. Pro-life news, Vatican announcements, catechesis, apologetics, the latest EWTN programming, and more. You can link to EWTN on Twitter from our homepage or go to twitter.com/EWTN. At work, at home, at school, and on the road. Stay connected to your world with EWTN's Twitter page.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Trent Horn is our guest, and lots of folks on the line looking for tips on defending the faith. If you'd like a tip on defending the faith, there's one line open, 888-318-7884. We go now to New Jersey. Grant in New Jersey, watching on YouTube. You're next. Go ahead, Grant, with your question.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Trent. I really appreciate all the work that you do and Catholic Answers does. I actually converted this past fall, so I just got confirmed and baptized this Easter. And your books, The Case for Catholicism and Answering Atheism, really helped me in that process, so thank you. But my question was, do you have any tips for people that are pro-life on trying to promote, the dignity of the unborn while also, trying to be reverent to those that are defending what you said, unrespectable positions?
Sure, that's always a balance that we have to maintain, and we should always be respectful to people that we engage. But at the same time, we don't have to be a doormat. We can be assertive when speaking with others. So I think the way to do that is to make sure that we always maintain a posture that is assertive but controlled. So not raising our voice, not becoming emotional, not personally attacking people, but also focusing on asking questions. Asking questions is extremely helpful in that regard. So I like to ask people questions who are pro-choice. My favorite questions include, do you think abortion should be legal through all 9 months of pregnancy for any reason? And most people who identify as pro-choice will say no, that it should not be. And I'll say, okay, well, where do you draw the line? And then I ask them to defend why they drew the line at 6 months or 3 months or for this case or for that case. And eventually they'll see there's really anywhere you draw the line is going to be arbitrary. It's kind of an all or nothing proposition you have to deal with, because that gets to the other question that I like asking. And that would be, what are the unborn? I always want to get people to that one question, what are the unborn? Because if the unborn are not human beings, then abortion needs no justification. But if the unborn are human beings, then abortion cannot be justified. So we always want to get back to that one question and really keep the conversation focused there. But it's okay. The point I make, we should be gracious, but we can also be assertive. I'll give you an example. I was just on social media today, actually, and I wrote this because I've been seeing this discourse online. And normally I try not to get into politics too much. This isn't really that much of a political issue, but I'm seeing this more among Catholics, and I wanted to issue a strong response to it. I wrote a message to left Caths. These would be Catholics who identify more of a liberal persuasion politically or theologically. And in a previous tweet, I even said, whatever your politics are, you can have all kinds of politics and be pro-life. The one thing that unites people who are pro-life is this, that we believe it should be illegal to directly kill an innocent human being. And I wrote, if you say you're pro-life, but you want abortion to remain legal, and I wrote in all caps, you are not pro-life. And wrote to explain, your position, it's almost identical to pro-choicers who say they want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. And it's interesting, some people write in the comments, like, how, you're writing in all caps. I guess that's the internet way of yelling. So maybe I broke my own rule. I don't know. But sometimes you have to put statements bluntly, or when I talk to a pro-choice person, sometimes I put it bluntly. When they talk about abortion or choice, I'll say something like, so why do you think it should be legal to dismember very small children before they are born? Can you help me understand that position? So notice I'm putting it bluntly, but I'm still being calm and I'm being gracious about it, but I'm not pulling punches about the truth that I'm sharing. And that's the balancing act we always have to maintain. We want to be meek in our tone. We want to be gracious, but we want to strip away euphemisms and get at the truth with people. And asking good questions can help us do that. So here's what I'd like to do for you, Grant. I have a course. I'd recommend all our listeners go and check this out. Well, everybody listening needs to go check this out. I'm being very strong about this, being very assertive. I have a course at the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics called Arguing Abortion. I think it's called that. I'm going to look it up now to see what exactly the title is. But I have a school at our website, schoolofapologetics.com. I have a class there on pro-life that I definitely want people to go and check out. Because now is the opportunity, right? This is the opportunity where people are talking about pro-life issues. Man, I really hope it's there, actually. I only see 6 of them. I'm pretty sure it's there. So, you know anything about that?
I'll check while you're answering.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's... Okay, it just wasn't... It's not on the front page. Let's see. There it is. It's a delightful... It has a picture. I love it because it has a picture of a toddler holding up her little finger, and her mouth is agape. Like she's saying, it's like she's saying, excuse me, how can you be in favor of abortion? You'll know what I mean, Si, if you go bring it up. The course is called Arguing Against Abortion. It's available now. It's a 30-lesson course, and it'll teach, because here's the thing. If Roe versus Wade is overturned this month or next month, that's not the end. It is the beginning. And there's people going out now protesting. They're going to rallies protesting in favor of abortion. I would love to see dozens, hundreds of pro-lifers going to these events and talking to pro-choice people. Like, you've got a great unprecedented opportunity. Here's a bunch of pro-choice people in one place. Go and ask questions and talk. The course Arguing Against Abortion will teach you how to do that. It's at schoolofapologetics.com. Check it out. Grant, I would like to send you a copy of that course, so stay on the line. We'll get your email info, and I will send you a free copy of the course. Everyone else, check it out at schoolofapologetics.com. I'm eager to try this out. I'm actually going to be in Houston at a Protestant conference. I'm going to be debating an atheist at a Protestant conference. More on that later. But I've heard there's going to be protests in Houston this weekend. If there are pro-choice protests, I'll go down to them and talk to people. That'd be fun. So I encourage others to do the same. So,
Grant, thank you very, very much for that question. I hope that was helpful. Hang on, and Thomas will get your information so that Trent can make sure you get a copy of his course. Okay, we don't have to talk about it right now, but I am interested in the debating an atheist for a Protestant audience.
I'll tell you right now. So I'm going to be at an event. Capturing Christianity is a apologetics organization started by a Protestant, Cameron Bertuzzi, who actually is very interested in Catholicism. He's kind of researching it now and doing interviews and mulling over becoming Catholic. And I just wanted to go down to his event. It was an event where he's going to have 2 prominent, an atheist and an agnostic critic of Christianity there, and dialogues and talks, and there's going to be a debate. And I thought, this would be fun to go to. I thought I'd just go down, hang out, see people. And it turns out one of the other Christians, a Protestant, who was going to debate the atheist is Alex O'Connor, the cosmic skeptic, who I debated like 2 years ago on Pints with Aquinas. His visa didn't work out, so he can't go. So Cameron asked me, hey, you're going to be here. Could you just hop into this debate? So I'm going to do the debate down there. That's available at Capturing Christianity at their website. People can go and check it out. But we'll air it on YouTube afterwards. But Alex is a very thoughtful person. I'm really excited. We're gonna actually have a dialogue rather than a debate. The dialogue will be on why I am and am not a Christian. So he and I will be chatting about that.
Let's go down to George in St. Louis, listening on 96.7 FM. George, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Trent Horn.
Hi, great to be on with you guys. My question is, I've frequently encountered some fellow Catholics who have a family member or a friend, more typically a family member, who is homosexual. And they tend to, even though they're observant Catholics in many other regards, they tend to just, shun church teaching on homosexuality, because they seem to be looking at it as like a either-or proposition. I either have to be loving and supportive of my family member, or I have to give my allegiance to the cold, unfeeling institutional church. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions. Obviously, it's a very delicate subject, but how I could engage them and let them know you can still love your family member, whatever their inclinations, but it's important also to adhere to the teachings of the church.
So, George, are you wondering what to say to these family members that don't feel comfortable sharing the church's teaching on homosexuality with a person who identifies in this way? Like, what to say to these particular family members? They're uncomfortable in sharing it, but also they just kind of they also just kind of dismiss church teaching on that point, because they're like, well, I have to be loyal to my family member. Not, it's more important than being loyal to the church on that point. So here's what I would say to them. I might say to them, do you think Jesus feels the same way, that you should be more loyal to family than to his church? Is that what Jesus Christ would want you to do? I think many of them would say, well, yeah, of course. And that, what's funny is many people have in their mind a Jesus who never really existed. Their Jesus is buddy Jesus who just wants you to be happy. The real Jesus said in Matthew 10:37, anyone who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So sometimes it's helpful just to say, look, what do you think of these places where God has told us, we have to love him even more than our family members? Matthew 10:37. In the Gospel of Luke records Jesus saying this in an even harsher tone. Unless you hate father and mother, you're not worthy of me. Now, that's a Semitic expression that means to love less. Unless you love them less than me, you're not worthy of me. Or take them to 1 Corinthians 6:9-10 to say, what do we do? Paul has told us, here are things that can keep you out of the kingdom of God. Being a drunkard, a reviler, greedy, a robber, sexually immoral. And it also says being a homosexual. Now, not the inclination. That's important to tell them, look, the church does not teach that merely having a inclination to something disordered is wrong. We all have disordered inclinations. But 1 Corinthians 6:9-10 actually uses two Greek words to refer to two men who engage in sexual behavior with each other. So like all these behaviors, it says right there, that can keep you from the kingdom of God, but it says in 1 Corinthians 6:11, as such were some of you. You were washed, you were sanctified in Jesus Christ. So I would point to that. I would just clear up misconceptions, pointing out that it is not the inclination itself that is sinful. The church loves people and doesn't want them to engage in behaviors that misuse their sexuality, that ends up driving them further and further away from God. So what I would recommend, I'll give you two resources, George. One would be, we'll get your info. We'll send you a copy of my book, Made This Way. It tells parents how to teach their kids about tough moral issues. And I think the chapters on homosexuality would be helpful for you in that regard. The other resource I would recommend is a documentary made by my friends at Courage, which is an apostolate dedicated to helping those who have same-sex attraction to live chastely. That is called Desire of the Everlasting Hills. Desire of the Everlasting Hills. And that is, so if you just search for it, well, I hope it's still up. I always
it's still up.
these things.
You can just type in Desire of the Everlasting Hills. You'll come to
just
it.
Type in Desire of the Everlasting Hills, and it's a free documentary, everlastinghills.org/movie. And it's right there. You can watch. It's a beautiful documentary about 3 people with same-sex attraction who left the church, but then eventually came back to Catholicism. So those are 2 resources that I would definitely recommend to you for that issue. And yeah, I hope that is helpful for you. And I'm very grateful that you called in.
Okay, George.
All right,
All right.
Thanks. That was very helpful.
All right, good. Hang on. Thomas will get your information so we can send you Made This Way. That's what we're sending, right, Trent? Made This Way?
Correct.
I'm sorry. Did I wake you? I apologize for that, Trent. 888.
I was deep in thought.
I could see that.
Pensive.
I knew that he just went somewhere else. 888-318-7884, the number. If you got a question, you want a tip for defending the faith, Trent Horn is here to answer that question. 888-318-7884. Second hour, Father Andrew Younan will be here with us, and we're going to talk about Aristotle. But it's going to be the most fun talking about philosophy that you have ever had. All right, we'll take a quick break. Right back with more Trent.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com. Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Starting off the week the right way. Trent Horn here with us with tips for defending the faith. If there's something that you'd like some help explaining about the faith, or defending about the faith to somebody, whether it's a fellow Catholic or a fellow Christian, maybe an atheist, you got something you'd like to better handle, Trent is here to give you some tips for that. 888-318-7884. Going down to Omaha, Nebraska. Jenny, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Why did I say down to? You don't go down to Omaha, Nebraska. You go up to Omaha, Nebraska. Sorry, Jenny. Go ahead with your question for Trent.
Hi, Trent. Thanks for taking my call. I have a cousin who is of Seventh-day Adventist background, although I don't think she's practicing that particularly. But I would like to explain or tell her about what anointing of the sick is. Her mother was raised Catholic, then became Seventh-day Adventist, and has not been practicing the faith, but she's now unresponsive and probably heading towards the end of her life, and I would like to see her receive that sacrament. Right. So how would you explain it to someone in a convincing way that they would arrange it for their parent?
Sure. Well, and so the person, okay, let me see if I understand the people involved in this. The mother left Catholicism but is baptized, is a Seventh-day Adventist, but now she's becoming sick and unresponsive, and you're trying to convince her children to have her anointed?
Right.
And are her children, and then her children are also Catholic, but they're not Catholic anymore, and they're not Seventh-day Adventists. They're just not Catholic. Am I understanding that right?
Her kids were never raised Catholic.
I see. Okay. Well, are they Christian, like Protestant at all, or Christian, or believe in the Bible?
I know this daughter believes in God. I'm not sure where she stands. Otherwise, yeah.
I see. Well, then I would recommend when I try to explain to people why Christians anoint the sick. First, you can. There's a good discussion of it, obviously, in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. So, in paragraph 1532, it talks about the grace of the anointing of the sick, what it does for people. Unites the sick person to the passion of Christ for his own good and the good of the whole church. It strengthens, gives peace and courage for those who are enduring suffering. It communicates the forgiveness of sins, and it can restore health if that is what the person's soul, their salvation, needs at that moment, or it prepares them to pass over into eternal life, to pass over into life eternal. And that's what the Catechism says, paragraph 1532. Now, some people might say, well, Catholics just invent this kind of stuff to have something else to do. No, we can go right to Scripture. The Catechism says that Christ has given this to us as a sacrament, a visible sign of the invisible communication of his grace, his spiritual life to us. The Catechism says it's alluded to in Mark, but that it's explicitly found in the letter of James. So James chapter 5, verses 13 through 16 can help explain this more. There, James says, James 5, 13 through 16, "Is anyone among you suffering? Let him pray. Is any cheerful? Let him sing praise. Is any among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church." In Greek, that would be presbyteroi. And from that Greek word, we get the English word priest. So it's literally saying, let him call for the priests. At least presbyteroi, we render it as priests in English. So at least that's where the English word comes from, that Greek word. "And the prayer of faith will save the sick man, and the Lord will raise him up, and if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous man has great power in its effects." So notice what is interesting here, that it talks about if you're praying for one another, but it says don't just get anybody if you're sick. It doesn't say call a brother to have him pray over you and anoint you. It doesn't just say have a brother Christian do this. It specifically says call for the elders of the church. And that's why the church teaches that the valid minister of the sacrament of anointing of the sick are priests. Priests are the minister of the sacrament for it to be valid. And so the prayer, it says that you call these elders, these priests. And so there we have a very clear, I would say, example of this in Scripture to show that God wants to spiritually strengthen us, and he gives us visible means to do this, so we know we've received this grace. And they're fitting means. Water is fitting because it cleanses us. It washes away sin. Our old self dies in the water of baptism. It drowns in the water of baptism, and we rise to new life in Christ. Other sacraments like confirmation or anointing of the sick use oil because we're sealed. Oil is a sign of sealing someone. And in this case, anointing of the sick seals, it strengthens. In the ancient world, oil had a lot of medicinal purposes. So it's fitting that Christ would use oil for those who are dying, or if they're even very ill or about to undergo a major surgery, this is something to strengthen them. So what I would recommend then is that, Jenny, I would point them to James chapter 5 and paragraph 1532 in the Catechism. If they're not very open to religion or the Bible or Jesus in general, I would recommend my book, Why We're Catholic, Our Reasons for Faith, Hope, and Love. And I think maybe I'll send you 2 copies, because no one can stop me, at least yet. One for you and one to give to one of your friends. Let's do 2 copies of Why We're Catholic. And that might be because they might need some of those fundamentals of understanding why we believe in God, Jesus, and the church before anointing of the sick makes sense. So you can get one. You can give one to your friends. Is that a good start?
That is. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jenny. It was great to have a chance to talk with you. Hang on. You're getting 2 copies of Why We're Catholic from Trent Horn. Just Thomas, you got that? All right, Thomas will get it. Let's go to Liz in Texas, listening on Ave Maria Radio. Liz, you there with us, Liz?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Hello.
You're going to have to speak right into the phone and go ahead with your question for Trent.
Yes. How can I defend against, the Protestant says that we have statues and that we have flowers and candles and all kinds of things that we shouldn't be using.
Right. People will say, well, you shouldn't. I would say, well, why? I would ask them, why should we not have statues of holy people or pictures representing holy men and women or pictures representing the members of the Trinity? Why shouldn't we have a crucifix showing how, Jesus, that he died on the cross for us? Why shouldn't I? And Protestants might say, well, because the 10 Commandments say you shall not have any graven images. There you can point out, well, no, the second commandment, second commandment for Protestants, Catholics subsume that under the first commandment, which says you shall have no other gods before me. You can say, look, the Bible does not say you can't have statues. In fact, if it did, the Bible would contradict itself. In the book of Numbers, Moses made a statue of a snake at God's request to heal people who had been bitten by snakes. The Temple of Solomon had images of angels and other creatures in it. So the Bible never says that we can't have statues or images of holy people. It just says, do not bow down to them and serve them. Do not treat the statue as if it were a god itself. The statue or picture or icon helps us to remind us of the holy person or the divine person behind it. In the case of the Son, you can make an icon of Jesus because Jesus became an icon. He became man. He became visible for us to know what, we could apprehend him. He's a man like us. At least it has a human nature. So I would just point out the Bible never says you can't have statues. It just says you can't worship them as if they are gods. But you can also point out that Protestants have many statues or images. They often have a picture of a cross or a statue of a cross in their church. That's a statue, but they don't worship the cross. The cross reminds them of what Christ did for them. And that's the same for the images of holy men and women that we have in Catholic churches. So I hope that is helpful for you, and I'm grateful you called in.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks very much. That takes us right up to our break. We'll take that break and be right back with more tips for defending the faith with Trent Horn right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Underwriting by Great Catholic Music.
Great Catholic Music, your one-of-a-kind streaming platform for traditional Catholic hymns and contemporary favorites 24 hours a day. Music that soothes the soul, that's safe for the whole family to listen to. What a relief. Great Catholic Music. Download the free mobile app or listen on any Alexa-enabled device or write from your PC or tablet at greatcatholicmusic.com. Great Catholic Music. Melodies for the soul.
This is Raul Caro, founder of the JP2 Catholic Radio Network. Catholic radio promotes the sense of the personal encounter. The type of encounter found between a radio host and callers helps to soften up the heart and open it up to receive the word, which is the good news. As a result, hearts are transformed and lives are saved because of Catholic radio.
The world needs EWTN Catholic Radio, now more than ever.
We have a big problem. Our culture is dying, and souls are in danger of being lost. The answer is conversion to Jesus Christ in His church. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a Catholic organization, and we have hundreds of teams spreading the good news throughout the country. But we need your help. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Lots and lots of folks on the line, so we've just been going right back to the phones each time. But I do want to take just a moment to invite you to Catholic Answers Conference. We do this conference once a year. It's just a wonderful, big apologetics and evangelization conference. And this year, the focus is on the Eucharist, as the focus of so much of the church is on the Eucharist right now, with the news about how many people, even Catholics, don't really understand the church's teaching at all about the Eucharist, and some maybe who understand it who don't believe it. So we're trying to increase that understanding, defend the church's teaching on the Eucharist as the very heart of Christian life. And so the conference is called The Eucharist, I Am Always With You, September 22nd through 25th, right here in sunny San Diego, California. Some wonderful speakers, including our guest today. Trent will be there. Bishop Thomas Paprocki will be there. Dr. Lawrence Feingold, Simone Rizkala. We'll do a couple of live tapings of this program, Catholic Answers Live. We'll do one on Thursday afternoon, and then the big one on Friday in the big ballroom there at the Hyatt, where we'll all be. You can get $50 off right now by using the promo code early when you go, and even I suggest you do that. I mean, what the heck, get the $50 off at CatholicAnswersConference.com. But I also have a strong feeling about this one. I know that our limit is about 1,000 people. It probably is 1,000 people, and I got a strong feeling we're fully kind of emerged into large public gatherings here in California where we weren't before. You can gather large groups of people here now. And I'm glad you can. Paul McCartney had like 80,000 people the other night up in Inglewood, I guess is where he was. We're not going to do that, but 1,000 people we can get together in a room. And I think this is going to go quick. I think that it's going to fill up pretty quick because lots of people are anxious to get out again and do these kinds of things. It's a wonderful conference. We have a wonderful time. CatholicAnswersConference.com. Use the promo code early right now for $50 off each conference ticket. We go now. Let me see where we're going. For Trent, we're going next to James in New York. James, thank you for your call. Go ahead with a question for Trent.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to. Sure.
There's a little bit of complication here. I proposed this question to my priest, and he couldn't even answer it or even give me an adequate explanation of it. It pertains to a saying in the Nicene Creed, and I don't want to fall into Arianism with it.
Right.
But it seems like a contradiction in terms when it says that the Son is consubstantial with the Father, which means he's of the same nature as the Father.
Right.
But the word begotten, like my Father begot me, but before that I wasn't born. Begotten means to generate or give birth to. So how can you explain that the Father begot the Son? Wouldn't that be like he created him, and then all of a sudden he's consubstantial, being of the same nature? I really don't understand the word begotten within the term in the Nicene Creed.
Trent?
Yeah, so the issue here is that we have to understand that God is timeless. And so when we think of begetting, we think when it applies to human beings that when I begot my own children, there was a time when they did not exist, and then later there was a time where they do exist. So begetting for human beings who are within time, there's going to be these temporal intervals. There's going to be cases where I beget someone, and then there was a time when they did not exist. But begetting, properly speaking, does not mean, it does not of necessity have to have a temporal element to it. What it means, rather, is that its primary meaning is to be the cause of existence and to supply one with a particular nature. So when a dog begets a dog, it is the dog, is the cause of the other dog's existence and is the reason that dog has a dog nature. Humans beget humans. It's the reason that other human exists and the reason that human has a human nature. So with the members of the Trinity, the Catechism speaks about this. I think, I have Catechism 454 here. I'm trying to remember where it says about in relation to the members of the Trinity. It does talk about the title Son of God and signifying the unique eternal relationship of Jesus Christ to the Father. The idea here is that the Father's relationship to the Son is one of generation. The Son's is of being begotten. The Holy Spirit proceeds from them. Everything that the Son has comes from the Father. But all of this happens, all of this inner life of the Trinity happens in a timeless existence. There are no moments of change. So that can be hard for us to wrap our heads around. But what's important to remember here is just that everything the Son has comes from the Father. But what the Son has then is an equal divine nature with the Father. There is one God who eternally exists as these three persons. And all of this takes place in a time, their relationship between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit exists in this timeless element. So you have this perfect self-giving between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit that is eternal. Not like it's been going on forever into the past moment by moment, but rather that it just is perfect and immediate and contained in one timeless moment or one eternal possession of divine life is so what I would recommend there. But yeah, I guess that's where I would start. And if you would like to go a little bit deeper on some of these complex questions about the nature of the Trinity, definitely check out a few of our articles at Catholic.com on the Trinity and other issues there.
Thanks, James. We're getting near the end of our time with Trent, so I will just keep going, try to get as many on as I can with Trent. Noah in Wheaton, Illinois, watching on YouTube. Go ahead, Noah, with your question for Trent.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I just want to say I really appreciate, Trent, your content on pro-life issues. I've been watching for 2 years now. Man, your stuff has been so helpful to me, and I so appreciate your bravery in talking about this issue today.
Sure.
So my question is, from an article I read responding, a pro-choice article responding to some of the protests, in favor of the protests, talking about how, we define life as beginning at conception, but there's so many fertilized eggs that get fertilized, but they die in a fallopian tube, so they never make it to implantation. So right. how can you defend that life begins at conception if why shouldn't it matter? Why should it matter if we end that life if many of them are going to die anyway before they would have a chance to become a baby?
Okay, Noah.
Sure. Well, a few thoughts on this argument. Number one, notice that this particular version of the argument does not defend legal abortion, because no abortion causes the death of a child prior to their implantation. That might be the case with some emergency contraceptives, but abortions take place at the earliest after a child already has the rudimentary elements of the heart developing, is growing and developing in the womb. So what's interesting is this argument, even if it were true, would not justify abortion. Now, many children do end up being miscarried even after implantation. There is a high mortality rate for children. We don't know exactly, by the way, how high the mortality rate is because embryos that fail to implant or embryos that miscarry, it is possible a significant number of them are not human organisms. They're collections of tissue and DNA that are not a human being, but just a cell mass that has reached the end of their growth, but they're not a fully integrated human organism like you or I, even in a younger stage of development. But let's just grant it. I'll grant that for the premise. Let's grant that a third or even 50% of embryos do not survive up until birth. Does that mean they're not persons and so they should not have a right to life? The problem with this argument is that in many places around the world, in rural areas of the world today, in very impoverished areas, and also throughout most of human history, child mortality was extremely high. In most of human history, child mortality was 50%. What that means is that think about this, half of all children did not make it to their 5th birthday throughout human history. Half of them did not reach the age of 5. They either died, usually they died of illnesses when they were infants, different illnesses that might have caused dehydration or other kinds of flu-like symptoms, illnesses. They, died in accidents, all kinds of things. I mean, I have a 2-year-old that gets into everything right now. I don't know how the human race survived, given how mischievous they are. But would that have proved throughout human history that you could kill 4-year-olds because most kids under 5 don't make it to adulthood? No, of course not. Just because a group of human beings has a high mortality rate, it doesn't follow they're not human or that they're not persons. All it follows is that we shouldn't make a bad situation worse by directly killing them. So that's probably how I would address that issue. Noah, is that helpful for you?
Yeah, that's definitely helpful. Going back to what you were saying a second ago, if I could, I understand if you have to move on, but
no, that's fine.
You were saying how that there's a possibility it could be just a mass of tissue or not a human being. If that's true, I mean, how do we say life begins at conception and not at implantation? Or correct me if I'm misunderstanding that.
Well, what I would say is that a human being's existence, for most human beings, begins after fertilization is complete. I always have to qualify these things because technically it is possible that identical twins come into existence at twinning, okay, which happens 14 days later. What happens there is a bit of a mystery I can address in another episode. But for most people, fertilization is, and that's what biology textbooks uniformly say, fertilization, aka conception, is when a new organism comes into existence, in this case, a new human being. However, it does not follow that every union of sperm and egg is a successful fertilization. Okay, so every successful fertilization, every human being that exists, except for identical twin cases, came from a sperm-egg union, and excluding cloning, things like that, sperm-egg union. But not every sperm-egg union is a successful fertilization, because some sperm and egg come together and form something called a teratoma, which is just an uncontrolled cell growth. And some of these other embryos might be similar to that. But it doesn't follow that just because some sperm-egg unions are not human beings, it doesn't follow that the many other examples, they are human beings. And so if we're not sure, we should err on the side of caution. But in most cases, when someone knows that they're pregnant, there is a high degree of probability that this is a human being that is developing inside of them. Just the same as if you were hiking with a friend and you think there's a bear behind the trees, and you take out your gun to shoot, but you're not sure if it's a bear or your friend. Well, you're not going to want to shoot until you have moral certainty that it is not your friend. And I say the same would be true of the unborn. And we have certainty that abortion takes the life of human beings in the vast majority of cases. So I hope that's helpful, and thanks for calling in.
Thanks, Noah. I want to be really clear about this one, just so that everyone's clear on exactly what you're saying, Trent, that every time the conception or fertilization takes place, you have a new human life. But sometimes sperm and egg come together, and conception or fertilization does not take place. The process is disrupted or distorted in some way, and in that case, you do not have a human life. Is that correct, Trent?
Right. I would say that when you are focusing on the nature of human beings and their nature in the womb, you have to take all of this into account. There could be some extraneous elements, but it all ends up being very simple in understanding the ethics of ending the lives of unborn children, which shouldn't be doing.
All right, fair enough. We know when life begins. We also know that not every time that sperm comes in contact with an egg, a human life begins. Sometimes other things happen.
But when we look at that ultrasound, we can know, hey, that's a successful fertilization. That's a human being. Let the baby live.
Coming up, advice from Aristotle. Father Andrew Younan here with us the second hour. I hope you will join us. I'm looking forward to it myself. I think you should join us. We'll see you then. right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, joined by Father Andrew Younan. And I hold in my hands a book called Advice from Aristotle, Life Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics. And you might say, well, who's that for? I'll tell you who it's for. It's for you if you're interested in human flourishing and happiness. And it's for your kids or your nieces and nephews or your grandkids. If you're like, I don't know why these kids aren't more connected to the philosophical and religious traditions of well, this is a great book to help them realize in a really fun way, in language that they will get, that some of these things are the traditions of our culture because they're really, really good. And but this is a book about Aristotle, one of the great thinkers, a man who's such a great thinker that in the Middle Ages, people didn't even use his name. It was like he was bigger than Cher. They just called him the philosopher. And this book is dedicated. Can I read the dedication, Father?
Oh, no. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I?
Yeah.
It's dedicated to my garbage people.
Yeah.
Why, Father? Oh, first of all, welcome, Father Andrew.
Well, thank you.
Younan.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Why is the book dedicated to your garbage people?
That's actually an inside joke.
Is it?
It's dedicated to a particular group of people that
okay.
are very special to me. So, however, a lot of people that have gotten the book, by the way, basically everybody got this book before I got my copies. So it was this funny thing that all these people would buy it on Amazon and they would post it and oh, cool, I haven't seen one yet, but I'd repost it. But a lot of them would see the dedication and think that I'm saying that everyone is garbage, which is also true. In a sense, insofar as we're fallen human being, whatever. But no, this is like an inside joke to a group of friends that is.
I took it that you really appreciated the work of the garbage people who come by and take your garbage away once a week.
I actually absolutely appreciate their work.
I know.
And that's not even a joke. Imagine life without them. Imagine a city without garbage.
Okay, so the book, I got to say, I just got a copy today. So I read the chapter on friendship.
Okay.
But a very, deep insight into Aristotle, but in very modern, contemporary, kind of whimsical, fresh, flippant, fun language.
I've never been called whimsical before. I like that.
That's the first time with whimsical?
Yeah.
I don't want to make people think that it's that the language you use is somehow unaccessible. It's accessible. It's fun. This is a fun read.
Yeah. So I've taught this book, the book that this is written on the Nicomachean Ethics, a number of times. I teach philosophy a lot, and my students are generally non-philosophy majors. So years and years and years of practice explaining philosophy stuff to non-philosophy people. My concern was that it became kind of watered down because the way I explained it. And it wasn't until I showed it to some scholars that I have a lot of respect for who've written really serious books when they said, no, you didn't do that. You didn't.
No, right.
It's not less substantial because it's clearly explained in non-technical language. So that's exactly what I was going for. So I was really happy when I felt,
just in the parts that I read, I felt like it was amazing to me how you were taking what is very complex stuff, and complex in the sense that you're trying to describe human nature, for example, or trying to describe what virtue is or that kind of thing, and that requires some subtlety, but you do it in a way I found it extremely accessible.
Thank you.
But also, what part of you said, you know what, I need cartoon illustrations in this book on the Nicomachean Ethics?
I thought it would be funny. Originally, I drew them myself. And they were just literal stick figures, and they weren't even good stick figures. If you've ever seen a good stick figure, you're like, oh, okay, that's art. No, it was just like a bad stick figure with my word bubbles and my terrible handwriting. And I scanned those, and I was serious about having them in the book. And then a former student of mine, Ruvi, who's a good artist, decided to. Well, she didn't decide. I asked her if she could do this, and this is a lot better.
Right.
Yeah. Although the stick figures would have been funny, but these are a lot more,
But for example, in this section I read on friendship, the idea of having mutual goodwill, but then defining good in 3 different ways.
Right,
and there's this little tiny little silly picture of 2 friends having mutual goodwill towards one another, and it actually helps the brain go, okay, it just organizes the material for me.
Right. Well, thank you. Yeah. No, she did a great job with it. I'm really happy with them.
Okay, so tell us about Aristotle. Why should this show's called Catholic Answers?
Yeah,
you're a Catholic priest of the Chaldean Rite.
Yeah,
you teach philosophy and you run a Chaldean seminary.
Yes.
Why are you teaching us Aristotle? Why aren't you teaching us I don't know, the Book of Jude or something?
Yeah, that's a cool question. It's actually, well, there's sort of 2 sides to this. One is from the tradition. It's really sort of embedded in the Catholic tradition, broadly speaking, at least since the Middle Ages, to take philosophy seriously, and in particular since the Middle Ages, as you noted, Aristotle.
Mm-hmm.
In the Chaldean tradition, in the Chaldean and Assyrian tradition, what's called the Church of the East, it actually goes even further than that. And we have commentaries from bishops of the Church of the East on Aristotle's works that goes back to as far back as the 6th and 7th century.
Wow.
And so that tradition is even sort of, in particular with Aristotle, it goes back even farther with us.
Yeah.
On the other
so it's
side,
like you're kind of like the Chaldean Church. Well, we were into Aristotle before Aristotle was cool.
Well, so
that's what you're saying.
So the story is everybody knows, St. Albert the Great and Thomas Aquinas.
Right.
And the West sort of rediscovered Aristotle when, so the Arabic philosophers were writing on him and they brought him to the West through Spain and all of that. Cool. Where did the Arab philosophers find him?
Where'd they get it?
Well, the church that was there in the Middle East was already
wonderful?
writing about Aristotle, and we had commentaries. And in fact, when Baghdad was established and there were a lot of centers of learning there, it was monks from the Church of the East and among other churches that were asked to translate Aristotle from Greek into Aramaic and then into Arabic.
Right.
And it was those translations, or sort of that tradition, that was brought to the West. And then from Arabic, it was translated initially into Latin. And that's what people like St. Albert and St. Thomas were looking at until they said, okay, well, we should go back to the original Greek text and translate them directly into Latin.
Right.
Until that movement happened, William of Moerbeke, I think, was the guy that did that. Until that was happening, it was a translation of a translation of a translation.
That's a wonderful part of the story, though, that the Arabic scholars that gave them this to Europe got this from Chaldean Christian scholars.
Yeah. They weren't exactly called Chaldean back then, but I'm okay with calling them now. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so but why, though? Why? I mean, even if we say, well, you could say to me, Father, well, it's very ancient, this Christian interest in Aristotle.
Yeah.
Why? What is it about Aristotle?
Right. That's the more important. That's the more interesting part of the question. I think one thing that's easy to forget in our fervor in religion and being sort of religious people is nature and natural reason. And it's very much within the Catholic sort of tradition. We have what's called natural law within ethics. And we have a very sort of intricate, interesting relationship between faith and reason in the Catholic Church. And so in our zeal in sort of promoting the faith, which is totally legitimate, we forget that, well, faith and reason have a relationship that is very important.
Yeah.
And so this is an attempt. So one of the reasons why I think people are increasingly polarized and there's bitterness in society and all this sort of nasty stuff is happening is not just because we disagree on ideas. It's that we don't see each other necessarily as human beings, or we don't build each other up or build ourselves up in our humanity, which can be a foundation or should be a foundation of our communication, even across ideological boundaries. And so Aristotle, I think, does an amazing job of understanding human nature and what human flourishing is. And that's something that, I mean, this wasn't written for a Catholic audience as such. It was written really for everybody.
Right, anybody can read this
because I think everybody needs to work on being human and better as a human being. And then from that foundation, when you go from a healthy or healthier humanity, that's a stronger foundation to start talking about Christ. But if you're just we're just all rotten and I'm just a terrible human being, and so are you, and so are we're all, and allows us just absorbing Christ into this, and on an intellectual level, that's what happens on the level of salvation. We are all sinners in need of the Savior, but when I'm talking to you, I should see you as a human being, and I should want you to be as happy as of a human being as you can, and I should be striving to do the same. And if we're both sort of working on that, we'll have a lot more in common to have the conversation.
Wonderful. Advice from Aristotle, Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics by Father Andrew Younan, who is our guest this hour. If you have questions on Aristotle, if you have questions on the use of philosophy in Christian circles and in the presentation of the Christian faith, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. More on Aristotle with Father Younan when we come back right after this.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
One time somebody said to me, "Why don't you air these people?" And I said, "No, because I don't think they're Catholic." He says, "By what right do you have to say that?" I said, "I own the network."
Mother Angelica Live Classics. Every morning, 2 Eastern, on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father Andrew Younan is our guest, and we're so happy to have him here. And he's not always seeking out time in front of the microphone because he's a philosopher, and you know how they are. But we're so grateful that he came because, and probably his publisher made him come. I don't know. It's Cascade Books, and you can get the new book, Advice from Aristotle, Life Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics.
I'm really happy with
Books
Cascade, by the way. I'm really happy with they're just great to work with.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it.
Yeah, they're up in Oregon.
Well, they had to have a good, fun spirit in order to do this. I mean, they had to be willing to let you speak to people in the way that, like, this reads like, I hate to say it, but reads like a normal person with a fun sense of humor wrote it, not like a philosopher wrote it. Is that insulting?
No, I take that as a compliment because I think one of the ways books like this get ruined is people trying to sound either too smart, and I'm going to sort of artificially introduce formal language when there's no reason to do that, or I'm going to sort of talk down to people because I'm so much smarter than everybody that everyone else is a dummy.
Yeah.
I knowing that that's how books like this get ruined, I just sort of tried to like steer right through that. But Cascade Withenstock took I don't know if they took a risk, but I'm not like a famous person. You know,
well, you are now. Look, you're here.
Well, now I'm on Catholic Answers.
Yeah,
so,
that pretty much
the
settles
famousest
that.
ever.
Advice from Aristotle, Life Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics. So Aristotle, living in the 300s BC, in a little place we like to call Greece. I mean, did he teach Alexander the Great? Did he really?
He really did. Yeah, he really did. Yeah.
But then he wrote a lot about a lot of stuff. He was interesting. But you picked the Nicomachean Ethics.
Yeah.
Why?
Because before I ever taught this book, I was really deeply influenced by it as an undergrad. And when I remember reading this book in, it was probably Dr. John Goyette's class at Sacred Heart Seminary. So we read through this, and I was just like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Because it tells you so many things that you wouldn't normally think about. Because when you're a kid, you're growing up, you just sort of, this is good, that's bad, and that's it. But this is sort of like, this is why.
Yeah. Why is that good?
Why is this good?
Yeah.
Why is
what are the levels of the good of this thing?
Yeah, it's the Sabbath was made for man.
Yeah.
So now, there's these laws, they're for us. Well, how are they for us? And this really gets into the inside of it.
Right.
Not that he has a Sabbath, but that.
No, but I understand what you're saying. That there's a sense of, like even in I read the chapter today on friendship, which is a beautiful chapter,
Thanks.
And Aristotle is so orderly the way that he talks about human nature. This sense of you have friendships of what you call you didn't call them friendships of utility, which is the usual
business relationships,
partnerships, or friendships of partnership, and then friendships of pleasure,
Yeah.
and then friendships of virtue.
Yeah.
But then all the things that Aristotle says about what each of those is, and they're not bad things. You know,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with a friendship of utility.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're using people.
Right.
But there's these higher levels you can go to. But then I have to say, when I read that as a Christian, then I think about the Jesus saying, "I no longer call you servants, but friends."
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this has a meaning to it.
Yeah.
Even I don't know if Jesus read Aristotle, but certainly even in the ancient world, there was this. I mean, to have been called a friend by Jesus, and then to have Aristotle unpack it for us. What are the levels of friendship? What does that mean that Jesus called us his friends?
Yeah.
It opens up even the Gospels in a way for you.
I do think I think it's a cool question whether Jesus or not would have read Aristotle. I have no idea what the answer to that would be. But sure, we're not talking about the same type of thinking when we're talking about the Gospels versus Aristotle. But certainly there's a shared vocabulary. I mean, both were written in Greek, for example.
Yeah.
There's some sort of shared overlap within the culture. And certainly there's a shared humanity. And so Christ in his humanity is speaking, and I no longer call you servants but friends. I don't know, is that, we're no longer friends of utility. I don't know if he ever would have thought of us as that.
Right.
But certainly we're friends. The idea would be to be friends of virtue with Christ.
Right.
Because he wants what's truly the best for us.
Right.
Which is, beatitude and,
Yeah. Right. There are some callers, and I want to get to the callers. The number, by the way, there are a few lines open, 888-318-7884. So how is the Nicomachean Ethics organized? Why is it this thing that you read it and you go, wow, this opens up life in a way that I hadn't had it opened up to me before?
Yeah. I teach a lot of Aristotle's books throughout the curriculum that I go through, and this is the ethics is the most readable, I think, and it's compared to the sort of famously difficult texts. He has books on analytics and on logic and on what does knowledge mean, and within metaphysics. These are famously insanely difficult texts, to the point where a lot of interpreters are maybe they're not even books, maybe they're just notes class notes that he was lecturing from,
right,
or notes that students were taking as he was.
Right.
This is really readable. This is one of the maybe 3 or 4 books that are the most readable from Aristotle's corpus, and for sure there are textual puzzles in his book, but I don't think they're sort of so burdensome on the text that it becomes impossible to read. They're just sort of well, how does this kind of thing work with that thing? And I tried to sort of ignore that stuff, because I do think he has a comprehensive picture that is complete and interesting, despite these little glitches that maybe you'll find if you really hold a microscope up to the text.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So what does he teach in the Nicomachean Ethics?
Well, the sort of basic structure is he'll start off by saying, all right, what's a human being? And for Aristotle, everything in nature is purposeful, and sometimes the purpose of it is a little bit hard to figure out, what's the purpose of a rock.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe the sort of teleology of those things isn't as blatantly obvious as the tree is there to grow or whatever, or to bear. But he says, well, human beings have to have a purpose, must have, like everything else in nature. What might that be? And he has this way of thinking about things in nature, that the thing that sets them apart from other species is sort of the thing that's special about them. For Aristotle, for the human being, that would mean logos, the sort of ability to think, but also to communicate with others. And so that gives them the sort of foundation to go further and say, okay, so that means there must be virtues of the mind, there must be virtues of social life, and to do those well, to act well with that end in mind, that's the ability to do that would be virtue, and actually doing that activity would be what happiness is. And so to think well, that's sort of what happiness must be, this sort of contemplative thought process. But however, there's also a kind of happiness that comes from social life, which is why 1/5 of his book is about friendship. 2 out of 10 books is about friendship. And one way to read the Nicomachean Ethics is to see it as a sort of prelude to his book on politics, because for him the city is an extremely important thing. But I didn't write on the politics for a lot of reasons. But for sure, this is a
well. This would probably be the most helpful to a person today. And like sometimes we have these words that we take to be good. And I don't think in the modern world we reflect on them the way that Aristotle did on, well, why is that a good? Why and what is it that's good about that good? And is there a higher good than that good? So that when you talk about virtue, for example, and friendship, the modern person has all these words like, I don't know, there's certain key words that you got to say, and they're like magic words, like tolerance, or I'm trying to think of some of the others, but it doesn't seem that we've done the groundwork for these words the way that Aristotle does, and that if the recovery of some of these things, like the discussion of virtue and happiness not meaning just la la la, but happiness meaning, a very, very high good of the mind. Like the recovery of these words seems to me would be very helpful in a society that has certain goods that it has not reflected on. Why are those goods good?
Yeah, well, I think that's the role of philosophy in general.
Okay.
Because that's really a Socrates thing, to sort of go around and say, all right, we're using these words and we think we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Give me a definition for that.
Right.
And then you get killed, and then
because Socrates just kills you.
So
right?
he's like admittedly annoying, but that's sort of what philosophy in general is supposed to do. And as a rule, the city, so to speak, the rest of the community isn't like that's not fun for everybody else. Philosophers like to sit around and like, let's define words. For most people, most sort of normal people, like that's really annoying and dumb to waste your time on. And it's kind of an irritant. And Socrates sort of saw himself as an irritant. He thought himself like a little mosquito. But that the relationship between thoughtfulness in general, if I can make it a little bit more abstract, and the rest of human life, there can be a tension between those things. And this is a book that attempts to sort of, make the rest of life more thoughtful.
Yes. Right.
Because it's easy for us to kind of just sort of get comfortable and use words without reflecting on what they mean.
I guess diversity is the other one I was thinking of.
There's all kinds of sure.
And they're not bad things. I'm not saying they're bad things, but we don't have a thought behind them. We just have them as kind of totems of,
Sure.
Oh, okay. So you put some of this Aristotelian thinking into those kinds of things, and now suddenly you have paths that were not clear become clear. Things that you might be you might be doing that are fun or bring you a great deal of wealth or whatnot. That doesn't mean that those things are good for you. Why are they not good for you?
Right.
What is a good thing that's good for you?
Right.
This kind of thinking is very helpful to us.
Yeah, and I think a shortcut to get answers to that, or like sort of suggested answers to that, would be, all right, let's look at the people that have this stuff. Let's look at the people that have a ton of money.
Right.
And look past their Instagram posts, that 3-second sort of
right.
picture. Look past that and look at, like, try to ask, like, what kind of life do they have? I don't know if they're really any happier than the people that don't have as much money.
You don't think Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are happier than us?
I have certain friends that are really into that, watching that, and I've that work at Catholic Answers that I regret being friends with, who. But I got sucked into that earlier today.
Yeah.
As I was like anxiously waiting to come on and have cameras pointed at me, and I'm just like, gosh, the whole thing is miserable because the whole relationship is so sad, but even sadder than that is all of us watching it.
I know.
On TV.
Right.
And
it's somehow it gives us pleasure to.
This is the interesting thing that we're all caring about. Gosh, it's pure gossip. None of this is any of our business.
No, that's right.
And there we are.
That's right.
And now we're talking about it, and they're listening, and it's just compounding.
Advice from Aristotle, Life Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics. It is from Father Andrew Younan, who is a priest of the Chaldean diocese of. It's an eparchy.
Yes.
Of St. Peter.
Yep, St. Peter.
And that covers the western United States?
From the Mississippi West, yep.
And there's a lot of Chaldeans here in the western part of the United States.
We're mostly in San Diego, but we've got a bunch in Phoenix and some in Las Vegas and some in Northern California, and yeah.
And we got a bunch of calls for you. Can we go to some calls?
Let's see if any of these are interesting.
All right. All right. We're going to pass judgment on your
Probably
callers. You ready?
Not.
Tom in Columbus, Ohio, listening on St. Gabriel Radio. You are numero uno this hour. Go ahead, Tom, with your question for Father Andrew Younan.
Hey, good day, everyone. When you mentioned, can you all hear me?
Yes, yeah, we hear you well.
When you mentioned, Father, about the Arab scholars in Chaldea, when they were translating the Aristotelian or dealing with the Aristotelian perspective or philosophies, were they also studying other types of philosophies with that during that period in the early Christian area?
Yeah, that's a cool question. So the Arab philosophers that sort of took it on after the Aramaic-speaking Christian philosophers were writing were certainly, many of them were very interested also in Plato's philosophy. In the Christian schools that were teaching, what we know in the sort of 5th, 6th century is they would read, the philosophy curriculum would look something like, they would read Aristotle's logical works, some of his natural works, and then they would kind of end up with natural theology from certain Neoplatonists. So yes, they were trying to mix them up even then. I'm being played off.
Yeah, you are, but we can continue if you want
good.
when we come back. Hang on, Tom. We got to take this break. We'll be right back with more. We're discussing Aristotle with the author of Advice from Aristotle, Father Andrew Younan. Right back with more after this.
This is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Thank you for listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Most of us Catholic parents agree our number one goal in life is to pass on the faith to our children. But here's the bad news. Today's world has a million ways to steal your kid's soul. Don't be afraid, says Father Sebastian Walsh. God loves your children even more than you do, and He desires their salvation more than anything. In his groundbreaking new book, Always a Catholic, Father Walsh shows you how to cooperate with God to bring about the fulfillment of His will for your kids. Always a Catholic reminds us that keeping our kids in the faith is about the way we live our Catholicism in our own lives and as a family from day to day. Order your copy of Always a Catholic by visiting shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father Andrew Younan is our guest. He has a wonderful new book called Advice from Aristotle, Life Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics. That one of, as he was saying to us earlier, one of Aristotle's most accessible books. But it does, Aristotle, even in his most accessible book, Aristotle doesn't give you cartoon illustrations. He doesn't give you jokes. He doesn't give you references to heavy metal bands. You understand? I'm not going to give them all away.
Well,
but
one of your guys over there was really happy about the heavy metal.
Oh yeah, Thomas. Thomas loves philosophy and he loves heavy metal music. So he was thrilled that some of the examples in here involved heavy metal music. But this is the kind of thing where if you're like, I wish I had a book that I could put in my teenager's hand or my young adult's hand that would give them an understanding of how to begin to think about true happiness and those kinds of things. This is the book for you. I think they'll love it. Advice from Aristotle, Life Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics from Cascade Press. Up next on the line, Jack in Evil River, Wisconsin, listening on WXER. We're glad to have you, Jack. Go ahead with your question for Father Younan.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Father Andrew. Having been, well, I won't explain my stuff, but I have a question because I went to a Bible study offered by an Episcopal priest who knew Old Greek. Mm-hmm. And my question to you is, on Aristotle's teachings, you had mentioned there was a third or a fourth translation that the Western world finally got to in the 5th and 6th century. Has anyone gone back and looked at the Old Greek written by Aristotle or the first translation? And is it that much different than what the 5th and 6th century thinkers were given at that time?
Yeah, so absolutely they did that. Now, in the West, it wasn't until the 12th century, I think, that they started to really look at Aristotle, the translation, the sort of levels of translations. But yes, it's sort of remarkable how well when they kind of compared the third, fourth level translations, when they finally dug up it wasn't finally, but like with that century they started doing it, dug up the Greek. They had done a pretty good job. It wasn't totally out of the ballpark, you know. They've been working on that for a long time, and still, I mean, probably for the last 700-800 years, they've been, you know, re-examining the text, and there's new critical editions, and everyone's got different, you know, the green, nice green Greek editions on their shelf, and absolutely. But that's kind of a continuous thing in philosophy to do that with. Now it's just Aristotle, but with basically everybody.
Jack, thanks very, very much. Father, I do want to run this objection by you that we get from our Christian brothers and sisters. Particularly, I think Catholics get this from some of our Protestant brothers and sisters probably. I just want the gospel. Why do I need all of this? These pagan philosophers. I just give me the gospel.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. It's not like I'm not talking about need. It's not like you're going to go to hell if you don't read my book. That would be a great selling point, but
I would sell more copies, Father.
But on the other hand, like the Word became flesh, and the humanity that he embraced is a real thing, and it's worth. I mean, just like it's worthy of reflection on human nature because it's the pinnacle of God's creation, and reflection is something. And God gave us the intellect capable of doing that. And so the question is not like, why should I? No, why not? What else are you doing? Are you that busy that you can't think about humanity a little bit from a human lens?
Yeah.
I mean, St. Paul makes it a big deal. In Romans 1, like, God made it clear to them, but their minds were darkened. Okay, let's look at a mind that wasn't darkened as much. I mean, certainly we all have sort of, fallenness, but so I would just sort of reply and say, like, all right, well, if you're that busy and you're just like, fine. Yeah. But like, I'm not certainly... I'm going to tell your viewers right now, if your choice is between you're so busy you can only either read the gospel or my book, forget about my book, throw it in the garbage and read the gospels. But if you've got some extra time on your hands, you want something with cartoons, you know, this is better than playing video games maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, but even if you don't read it, buy it. That's what I say.
That's fine too. And Jack, if you like it, review it. And if you don't like it, just forget you ever read it.
Thanks, Jack. You are going to like it, though. I'll tell you what. You open this book up and read it, you are going to like it. Bob in Williamsburg, Virginia, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. You are up next, Bob. Go ahead with your question for Father Andrew Younan.
Hey, Father. Yeah, Father, thanks for this program. And thanks for your book. I will buy it.
Cool,
I got interested in Aristotle just recently in my life, and the fact that Thomas Aquinas really leveraged all his philosophy a lot. But I wonder if you have heard one of the powerful things in my mind was Aristotle's eudaimonia, the great happiness, and the fact that Jefferson admitted that Aristotle was one of his most influential authors that he read.
Okay.
And I guess the thing that came out to me was happiness for Aristotle was not pleasure, but doing the right thing for the right reason. That's what drove the virtue ethics, right?
Okay, a little. So I'll say up front, I don't know anything about Thomas Jefferson. I mean, I know I vaguely have heard of him. I've heard of him. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
But I don't really know anything to speak to that connection. Happiness is in Aristotle distinct from bodily pleasure. So, you know, feeling good is not the same as happiness. For Aristotle, happiness is an activity, and it's a virtuous activity of the human soul as such. So it's us doing. So happiness is something that we do, not something that we feel. Although the feeling does accompany it. So virtuous means you're really good at something, and you're doing something that you're really good at, and there's not really any obstacles. When you think about that, like let's say playing a musical instrument is a really good example. That if you've kind of put in the hours, you're good at whatever, piano or whatever, and you're playing something that you like, that activity is as a sort of parallel of what Aristotle means by happiness. It's like doing that, but living, like life.
Yes, right.
So that sets it apart from a pleasure of I'm going to drink a bunch of alcohol and I'm going to sort of feel a kind of buzz. It's not that. It's more like the really good violin player playing violin really well and enjoying himself doing it. So there is pleasure involved, but it's not the pleasure itself.
So it's like an instruction book on how to get good at life, then.
Because a lot of it is about building habits. A lot of the ethics, there's an entire book just about building habits. And, I was looking at other, like self-help books that talk about this. And a lot of what they say is true. A lot of it is kind of silly. But those books can be really watered down and not quite, or not just watered down, it's just like they only know part of the story.
Okay.
Aristotle knows a lot more of the story.
Yeah.
Of where are you at? Well, you wake up at 8 a.m. and you do it and you get to class, but you hate your life and you curse the day you were born every time you wake up and get out of bed. How can you get from there to waking up and being glad you're awake? That's the kind of thing that Aristotle can talk about.
Yeah.
How can you get from, I'm exercising, I'm gritting my teeth, walking into the gym, to I actually look forward to my workouts now. How do you go from one place to the other? That's one of the big sort of pieces of this book.
But we're so, and I'm coming right back to you, Bob, but I'm just fascinated. But we're so into the life hacks now. Do this life hack. This is not a life hack. This is, you have to work. This is, you have to work to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And however, you can also work and kind of spin your wheels. And so this is sort of guidance of like, a lot of people have found this valuable in actually making the quote unquote progress that they want to make in the sort of internal habits that they have.
Bob, you had a great question, so I got a little involved there. But did you want to follow up, or was that all right?
Well, yes, just to say that I think that's one of the powerful things of Nicomachean Ethics was just that discussion of happiness, Father. That you realize, it's not pleasure. It's. I think one of his quotes is doing the right thing for the right reason. It's getting to that ultimate golden mean of his discussion of ethics.
Bob, I'm so glad you discovered Aristotle, and I have to say I've rarely enjoyed reading about Aristotle or thinking about Aristotle as much as I've enjoyed it when I've been reading these pages from advice from Aristotle.
Thanks.
I think you're going to get a kick out of it. By the way, there's a hilarious cartoon in here about getting out of bed. About what you were just talking about.
That's a personal example. I hate waking up. I have not gained that virtue at all.
You don't have that virtue.
Yeah, I've never.
But so virtue is I have developed the habit so much that it's now easy for me to be good in a certain way. So that it's easy for me to be good at the clarinet or
public speaking or waking up in the morning or working out
or it could even go all the way to I've developed the habit of loving my neighbor as myself.
Sure.
Could I do that?
So so there's two ways to think about this. One is this is how you can get really good at clarinet, but like there's more to because if that were it, then clarinet playing would be happiness for all human beings. But there's two things. There's one is sort of the personal, individual, preferences that we like doing certain things and we would like to do certain things. But then there's a human nature that we all share. And the activity of that human nature that's proper to human nature as such, that's one of the first things he talks about, which is this thoughtfulness, this logos that's built in with us. And it has to do with community life, it has to do with contemplation, and it has to do with even meditating on the highest things, which for Aristotle he names God, though he has no idea what the sort of personal God would be. It's still thinking and having the highest object for thought. That's the thing that all of us have in common, not just philosophers. So that means it's a kind of it's difficult and it's maybe rare, but it's not inaccessible to everyone. And I think about it as in terms of, not like I know this philosophical text or I can read Greek or I've published papers, but it's more I can just put the screens away, I can exist and I can be aware that I'm existing and I can know that there's something above me and just sort of experience that. I think that's close to what he's talking about.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm not good at doing that because I've got tons of responsibilities and things that I need to do. And so, this is sort of hope that all of us, even no matter what our lifestyle, can at least strive to attain.
We got to take a break. Thanks again, Bob, for that question. We'll do this break, Richard, in Dallas, and then we'll come right to your question when we come back right after this with Father Andrew Younan on Catholic Answers Live.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The EWTN home video highlight for May is The Heresies, Volume 1. The Catholic Church has fought against many heresies from the beginning, and these errors still infiltrate our culture today. Order your DVD at EWTNRC.com 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or call 1-800-854-6316.
Do you want to end abortion? Halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Just a great delight to get to talk with Father Andrew Younan. He's, are you the rector of the seminary here for the Chaldean Seminary? Is that what it is?
I am the founding rector of the only Chaldean Rite seminary outside of Iraq, and it's here in El Cajon, San Diego.
That is so cool.
20 minutes from here with all the red lights.
It's really cool what the Chaldean community has done here, by the way. I know this is not our topic at the time, but you have a monastery here?
We have a monastery.
We
have nuns. We just had an ordination of a priest on Friday.
Yeah.
One of our seminarians.
Yeah.
The Chaldean community is amazing. I'm really honored to be a part of it.
Yeah. Plus, a lot of really nice people. Like I always have a kick when
I've met, I think, one nice Chaldean.
No, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. Now, why would I like Chaldeans better than you would, Father? That makes no sense.
You don't know them as well.
Yeah. We got a big conference coming up in September, and I want to invite you to it again, September 22nd through 25th. Father, I can get you in free if you want to come.
No, I'm busy that day.
No, it's 3 days, and it's all about the Eucharist.
I like the Eucharist.
Yeah, so you should come. All right, this is going to be my pitch now on why you should come. There's at least a 50% chance that Father Andrew Younan will be there. So you definitely want to come to the conference.
10%.
10%. There's at least a 10% chance that, Father, you're not helping me with my ad. Go to CatholicAnswersConference.com, put in the promo code EARLY, and you get $50 off on your ticket right now. Boy,
I'm a pain.
Yeah. Do not buy the book, Advice for Aristotle.
Do
not buy that book. There's a 10% chance you'll enjoy it.
Yep.
Richard in Dallas, Texas, listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. You're up, Richard. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Father, I think you might have answered it. What would Aristotle, what would be considered his spiritual, you said he was maybe a pagan, considered pagan?
Well, I don't think he believed in the pagan gods. I think he and Plato and probably Socrates, definitely Socrates, didn't believe in Zeus and those guys. He seemed, now the text of Aristotle that refers to the gods or God is really difficult to interpret. The parts of the metaphysics and other places. So it's not quite clear. I think he believes in one God, but he also calls other things gods.
Yeah.
Like the stars. It's very kind of confusing. So, but I don't think he thought Zeus was a thing or like a real guy. Does that answer your question, or is there more to it?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
It was just because my grandmother, who was atheistic, sent me a book about Aristotle, I used to believe in New Age and all this stuff. And I read Aristotle, and I was like, this guy's smarter than anybody I know, even at the university where I went.
Oh, yeah.
And so I say I went from the reincarnation side of the line to the resurrection side because I was looking for some
cool.
some true
What
answer.
a great story.
Right. Yeah.
What a great story. Yeah. And it has to do with the reasonableness of it, I would assume, Richard, that there's something reasonable. Exactly. I mean, Aristotle encourages us to reason, and there's something reasonable about the resurrection that is not reasonable about Zeus and throwing thunderbolts.
That's the thing, because from the outside, from a sort of shallow reading, people that are not religious can be like, all you religious people believe in weird stuff, and they sort of define weird stuff as something I can make fun of easily.
Yeah.
And I can make memes out of cleverly. But you got to kind of scratch through the surface, because if you're going to say, just sort of within reason, if you're going to say, well, all religions are blank, all right, dude, well, let me see your 5,000-page paper where you went through every single religion and showed that. Because otherwise you're just making a general statement that's kind of just revealing your own stereotypes and prejudices.
Sure. Which is, I hear Christians do that to atheists, and I'm sure the atheists don't like it.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
atheists are like this. They all think this.
Exactly.
And they're not all this or that.
Right.
Richard, I really appreciate the call. Is that satisfactory, or is there more?
No, that was good. Really appreciate it. I'm going for the book.
I hope you will. Despite what I said before, Advice from Aristotle is a very fine book. Life Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics.
I'm going to steal this mug
from our. It's not stealing, Father. We're going to give it to you.
Well, that's no fun.
Yeah. Stealing will not make you happy. Have you not read the Nicomachean Ethics?
It won't make me happy, but I'll have a story.
Yeah, that you stole them.
That I stole something.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. So, Father, the themes then of the Nicomachean Ethics, what I'm getting from it, happiness, the distinction between the different levels of what's good for us.
Okay, so you have happiness and transitioning, going from bad habits to good habits.
Okay.
Knowing the difference between those things. Then he does talk about particular virtues for a couple of books. So you'll see things like courage and moderation and generosity and magnanimity, which is sort of like a kind of accelerated self-esteem, like sort of knowing that you are what you are and that you're something worth something.
I never heard magnanimity defined like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, the thing is, you'll see earlier translations of Aristotle translating megalopsicon as the prideful man. And sure, if it's like, you know yourself as something great, but the point of the virtue is not that you think you're better than everybody else. It's that you really are great and you're aware of it. Yeah. So if you think you're better than you actually are, then you're not practicing the virtue. So really, the virtue is defined by self-knowledge.
But that's a really important virtue in the sense that you won't be so willing to degrade yourself.
Absolutely, exactly.
That's the key. Like our era is an era where people are not ashamed to talk about how whatever degrading thing they're
talk about or do. I mean, sort of like when you're in school and you're like, your friends are trying to peer pressure you into something. You're like, oh, you think you're too good for this?
Yeah.
And so are you.
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
Yes, that's a very good point.
But
okay, so go ahead, Father.
Patience, politeness, I'm kind of reading the thing, table of contents. Wit, there's a virtue in just sort of social interaction where if you're just a jerk to everybody or you just ruin everybody's time all the time, that's a vice.
Debbie Downer.
Debbie Downer, exactly. Or if you're just so goofy that nobody can get a word in and talk about anything serious, that's too far.
That's hitting kind of close to home there, Father.
Me too. I know. I'm that. But so there's a sort of middle ground there. A lot of it has to do with not being too extreme in a vice. But the extremes are defined not numerically, but according to human nature. It all comes back to humanity.
Yeah.
So it's not a number of, 0 ounces of food is too little and 700 pounds is too much for a meal, and therefore 350 pounds is the perfect. No, it's attuned to who we are as beings, as social beings.
That's so helpful to think of it that
way. So that's the golden mean. It sort of can be over. What's a moderate amount of adultery that I should commit? No, it's not a mean that's numerical. It's a mean meaning. It's sort of tuned to human nature and its ends and its goals.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's in there too. A lot of that. Yeah. Let me see what else I can find. There is a chapter on the intellectual virtues, which might not be of interest to everybody, but it's cool. I think it's all interesting. Chapter on habits, 2 chapters on friendship. Then at the end, he talks about contemplation, and he sort of leads his way into the politics, just to go from, all right, if human nature really is social, which is an important part of the sort of defining thing, it's built into us to live with others. Therefore, the community we live in is something really important that we should talk about. And then he just sort of stops the book there.
Because you're going to take that up in the politics.
Right.
But what you're describing is a kind of way of thinking about the human person that I would call scientific in the sense that it's very well ordered and well reasoned.
Yeah.
But it does seem like people started to let go of thinking of human beings this way the more empirical science gained its footing. Is that a fair...
I think it's more complicated than that. So we're talking about sort of early Enlightenment stuff. As a rule, a lot of Enlightenment thinkers pushed back against Aristotle for various reasons. There were a lot of different reasons why that happened. I mean, Galileo is one of the thinkers that, he just sort of made fun of Aristotelian philosophers in a lot of his writings because they were so sort of dogmatically gripping onto Aristotle's text that if he just sort of showed them something in front of their eyes, they would say no. They would deny their senses and just sort of
they were slavishly following.
There was that. So a lot of this stuff was pushed against, and Aristotle was used to justify some pretty bad things too. And so that was put, sort of he was associated with.
Well, he's not perfect,
right?
I mean, he does make errors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for a lot of these reasons, he was kind of pushed into the background or rejected. Though there were some Enlightenment thinkers that really kind of wanted to retain a lot of what Aristotle was doing, like Leibniz, for example. But you had that. On the other hand, at the same time, you had a different way of doing science.
Yeah.
Which is what you're referring to, which is instead of the way Aristotle was doing it, it became a lot more precise. It became about measurement. It became about mathematical expression. Mm-hmm. And I think that's awesome too. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on that.
It became about
not exactly. There was,
no?
It's a kind of a rich picture.
Okay.
Where it's right. Easy as sort of religion people to say, oh, science is this, science is that. No, it's a much more interesting relationship.
Yeah.
Even historically. So I have another book coming up at the end of this year, maybe at the beginning of next year, depending on Catholic University Press and how fast they get through it.
And it's on?
It's on laws of nature, but a lot of the history of science is in it.
Wonderful.
But I think that's a really interesting question as well.
Okay.
And I see it, I think a better way to see it is that these are compatible ways to view the world. They're different, but they're compatible, as opposed to, oh, you science people are this and we religion people are this. I think that's...
They're compatible ways to see the world, but that doesn't mean that people will always find that compatibility.
Yeah,
people emphasize the discompatibility.
Yes, and that's what I don't like.
Yeah,
I
see what you're saying.
When sort of religion people do it, there's no reason to do that.
Okay.
We're sort of being threatened by reason itself. At least we're presenting ourselves that way.
Yeah.
And that's completely against the Catholic tradition. And it's against history, really. I mean, we have these, so...
all right. I'm trying not to be against reason and history.
Good.
I've been working on that. Okay, so one last question. He says the highest good then is contemplation. But
the highest activity, yeah.
Is that similar to what a Catholic means by contemplation, or is it does he mean something different by it?
I'd love to say yes, but I don't know. I don't think, on the other hand, like John of the Cross must have read a lot of Aristotle.
I see. Yeah. Right.
So
when he gives us contemplation as a good,
so it's not that Aristotle anticipated them; it's that they were reading him and they're like, "Oh, this, I think this is probably right."
This describes the thing that I'm trying to talk about,
or part of it, or some aspect of it. There's, I think, another big mistake to make is to sort of say, "I'm going to define God as," and you make this long list of attributes, and you say, if it's not this, then it's wrong to call what you're talking about God. Somebody like Richard Dawkins, his whole bit is saying, I'm going to define God as the thing that answers prayers. So therefore Aristotle was an atheist. Well, no, you just want Aristotle on your side.
I see.
But Aristotle talked about God, used the same word, and there's different aspects of God that we can know sometimes through reason, sometimes through revelation.
Father, again, the book is Advice from Aristotle. You can get it from Cascade Books. Father, thank you very much. But would you mind giving us your blessing and our listeners your blessing before we go?
طيب وثدمارن إيشو أمشيحة وحب دلها آوى وشود شابوث روح قدشته وعم كلن هاشا وبكل زوان والعالم آمين. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father.
Yep.
And that was not Greek.
That was Aramaic.
That was Aramaic. That was the language of Jesus himself. You just gave us a blessing in. Thank you very much for that, Father. Again, Advice from Aristotle. I'm stealing this copy because you stole our coffee mug.
All yours.
Life Lessons from the Nicomachean Ethics from Cascade Press. You get it. Enjoy it. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here, Catholic Answers Live.